In an era of deep political divide, half of registered voters in the U.S. said they expect to have difficulty casting their ballot in the 2020 election, according to a Pew Research Center poll. With early voting already underway,
as far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen.
Millions of people are voting before Election Day in 2020, and turnout could surge to 160 million voters by November 3rd, over 16% more than in 2016. COVID-19 and social distancing have only added to the complexities of voting, with millions expected to vote by mail for the first time, in all but about a half a dozen states allowing some type of early in-person voting. According to experts, voting machines need to be replaced roughly every 10 years for security and reliability issues. In 2018, Congress sent $380 million to the states for cybersecurity improvements, along with another $425 million in 2020. During that time, the U.S. has also continued its transition from paperless voting machines to polling place scanners that read paper ballots, which are less vulnerable to cyber attacks. In the U.S., more than 80% of voting machines are made by three companies: Election Systems and Software, Dominion Voting Systems, and Hart Intercivic. And while the companies are private, the mostly unregulated industry has come under increased scrutiny from policymakers regarding how the machines are made and their susceptibility to hacking. And it's not just voting machines that are under attack. In September 2020, Microsoft said over the course of several months, it detected cyber attacks targeting both Trump and Biden campaigns. The company said that the majority of attacks were detected and stopped by security tools built into its products, but indicated more attacks are expected.
Yet the deep state and the failed ruling class are trying to resist any changes to their failed policies of the past. They believe it is their right to rule over you and to redistribute your wealth all around the world. No, thank you. No, thank you. That's why we ended the Paris Accord.
Hi, I'm Steve Clements, and I have a question. What is the dangerous and murky deep state? When you hear the term deep state, what image does it conjure up? So who are they? The unholy alliance between Democrats, mainstream media, and government bureaucrats all conspiring.
Most Americans hadn't heard the term deep state. The tricky thing is that deep state is largely undefined. The political Rorschach is highly subjective, truly living in the eye of the beholder. The term typically refers to an intra-government conspiracy. HuffPost puts it this way: deep state implies a unified force deeply embedded in the republic that has its own agenda and the means to undermine the decisions of elected presidents and members of Congress. Its power derives from the control of the mechanisms of power and being invisible. Synonym: shadow government. The deep state exists, and it's a major problem. It was defined as military, intelligence, and government officials who try to secretly manipulate government policy.
They have an agenda.
We should deep six the deep state. How do you get the balance right?
These individuals are there to promote their parochial interest and their policy.
And they do have policy preferences, for sure. But there is, above that, there is an allegiance we all swear. That's the problem here.
Iraq's continued defiance of the community of nations
which must be
presents a challenge which must be
Mr.
addressed.
Wrangler?
It is inherently dangerous
to allow a country such as
allow a country such as Iraq to retain weapons of mass destruction, particularly in the light of its past aggressive behaviour.
If the world community fails
to disarm Iraq, we fear that other rogue
states
states will be encouraged to believe.
For him to recover. Democratic presidential candidate Joseph Biden today faces a controversy. 3 weeks ago at a debate at the Iowa State Fair, he used phrases identical to those delivered by British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock.
Biden seems to be claiming Kinnock's vision and life as his own.
Why is it that my wife is sitting out there in the audience is the first in her family to ever go to college?
Why is Gladys the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
My ancestors who worked in the coal mines in northeast Pennsylvania and who come up after 12 hours and play football.
8 hours underground. And then come up and play football.
It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
There was no platform upon which they could stand.
The notion that every thought or notion or idea you have to go back and find and attribute to someone, I think is, quite frankly, ludicrous.
The problem here is that Senator Biden told his audience he'd just been thinking about these things, and he failed to give any credit at all to his famous British speechwriter.
You know, I was thinking on the way over here. Now that's a little too much, because, as you point out, what's behind the words? What's there? And a lot of people are rap on Biden has always been, it's just a surface.
I should have said, to paraphrase Neil Kinnock, it's the only time I didn't.
But CBS News found a tape of a second instance.
It reappeared in the New York Times with a new charge that Biden had appropriated a famous litany from the late Robert Kennedy about what the gross national product cannot measure.
It cannot measure the health of our children.
The health of our children.
The quality of our education.
The quality of their education.
The joy of their play.
For the joy of their play.
Biden gave Kennedy no credit. He's also quoted or paraphrased John Kennedy, Hubert Humphrey, and British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock.
Joseph Biden admitted today that he committed plagiarism when he was in law school. He said it was a mistake, but that it was unintentional.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been dumb. I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again.
to the political community in Washington, it all seems of a piece. Plagiarism at law school, plagiarism on the stump.
The great communicator. Strike that. The great imitator.
Critics say he sells himself as a man whose words and visions can inspire a new generation in politics. But if the thoughts, phrases, and visions really belong to others, it's a form of false advertising.
Most people didn't know who he was, Joe Biden, and now they're going to say, oh yeah, he's the guy who plagiarized. I mean, politically, that's devastating. These clips are devastating. He looks like a Joe Biden wind-up doll with somebody else's words coming out.
The only way we're going to get rid of Saddam Hussein is we're going to end up having to start it alone, and it's going to require guys like you in uniform to be back on foot in the desert taking taking Saddam down. You know it, and I know.
I know very well what Joe's position was, because I answered those questions back in 2002, 2003, and 4. And ultimately, we learned, as Joe did and I did, that the intelligence was distorted. So I think we were let down, and Joe has said many times that it was a mistake, obviously, to
Some
trust.
of my own party have said that it was a mistake to go to Iraq in the first place, and believe that it's not worth the cost, whatever benefit may flow from our engagement in Iraq. He's popular. The stakes are high, and the need for leadership is great. I wish he'd use some of his stored up popularity to make what I admit is not a very popular case. But I and many others will support him when he makes the case.
Joe Biden lied again and again and again and again and again.
Senator Joseph Biden may have more explaining to do. The new questions stem from taped remarks of Biden during an April campaign appearance in New Hampshire.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School. I mean, this guy comes off this whole thing as a flyweight.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed him.
And I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
Joe Biden was victimized by the truth.
Bye-bye, Biden. He may not know it yet, but I think this is going to be very difficult for him to recover. Democratic President...
The guy's a pathological liar. Committed plagiarism in law school. He had to drop out of front running for president because he committed plagiarism. Oh, come on.
I just wonder if his stories will keep getting more and more ridiculous as the campaign trail goes on. Like, he's going to be like, breaking news, Joe Biden actually didn't go to college. We have not tracked down his high school diploma. More at 11. Like, he's going to be like, look, I was the guy. I was the guy who told Pontius Pilate, this Jesus of Nazareth is the good dude. You got to let him go. Then I was the guy who moved that stone a couple days later. I was there. I was the guy.
He constantly lying. His own staff told him, stop lying about your role in the civil rights movement. He wouldn't stop lying about it.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again.
Biden's record of being a phony is undeniable. And this is one of the main issues people had with Hillary Clinton as well, is that she wasn't honest. Joe Biden is even worse. These aren't random claims. This has been verified. This is verified reporting. So even CNN has reported on this in the past.
He lied to voters, according to the New York Times, quoting aides of Biden's, about having marched in the civil rights movement. This is Biden making this false claim in 1987.
When I marched in the civil rights movement, I did not march with a 12-point program. I marched with tens of thousands of others to change attitudes.
In the New York Times reports, quote, more than once, advisors had gently reminded Mr. Biden of the problem with this formulation. He had not actually marched during the civil rights movement, and more than once, Mr. Biden assured them that he understood, kept telling the story anyway. That is really, really weird.
It's more than weird. It's completely dishonest. Now, you may say, well, people aren't going to care about this. This is a long time ago. Just last week, Joe Biden made the same lie.
You know, when I was a teenager in Delaware, for real, I got involved in the civil rights movement. We have the 8th largest black population in America. Most people don't know that. And I'd go to 8 o'clock Mass, and I'd go to Reverend Herring's church, where we'd meet in order to organize and figure where we were going to go, whether we were going to desegregate the Rialto movie theater, what we were going to do.
Where are the receipts?
He's still telling this lie, even though it has been reported again and again that it is a lie. During the Democratic debate, one of the biggest lies was his history on Social Security.
My Lord, Bernie, you're running an ad saying I'm opposed to Social Security, that PolitiFact says is a flat lie, and that the Washington Post said is a flat lie.
Oh, well, let me ask you a question, Joe.
Yeah.
You're right here with me.
Yeah.
Have you been on the floor of the Senate? You were in the Senate for a few years.
Yeah.
Time and time again, talking about the necessity, with pride, about cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, cutting veterans programs.
No.
You never said that.
No.
All right. America, go to the website right now. Go to the YouTube right now.
I'm up for re-election this year, and I'm going to remind everybody what I did at home, which is going to cost me politically. When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government. And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time. Somebody has to tell me in here how we're going to do this hard work without dealing with any of those sacred cows.
Time after time, you were not a fan of Bo Simpson?
I was not a fan of Bo.
You were not a fan of the balanced budget amendment which called for cuts in Social Security? And the truth shall set you free. Why don't you just tell the truth here? We all make mistakes. Joe, let me repeat it again. I want you just to be straight with the American people. I am saying that you have been on the floor of the Senate time and time again talking about the need to cut Social Security, Medicare, and veterans programs. Is that true or is that
No,
not
it's
true?
not true.
That is not true?
That is not true. What is true is, in terms of the negotiations that are taking place, how to deal with the deficit, everything was on the table. I did not support any of those cuts in Social Security or in veterans benefits.
Whoa.
That's some serious mental gymnastics right there.
Everything was on the table. All right, you're right. You just said it, including, in your judgment, cuts to Social Security and veterans.
In order to get the kinds of changes we need on other things related.
Joe,
but we did not cut it.
I know, because people like me helped stop it. The balanced budget amendment approach being brought forth by the Republican majority within the context of asking, as I understand it, for a $60 billion increase in military spending and major tax breaks for the wealthiest people in this country leads all serious economists to the conclusion that the balanced budget amendment will be a disaster for working people, for elderly people, for low-income people. It will mean, in my view, the destruction of the Social Security system as we know it. It will be a disaster for the vast majority of the people in this country. The economy is not booming. The standard of living of middle America and working people is in decline. Unemployment is far higher than the official statistics indicate. It seems to us to be very foolhardy to take away an option of the federal government that we may wish to use, which says that it does not make sense to take away the option that the United States Congress may wish to use, and which the Progressive Caucus believes is necessary to rebuild the physical and human infrastructure of America.
All right. Now, if this debate was moderated properly, you would have the moderators come in and say, Joe Biden, you're lying. You did advocate for cuts to Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid veterans benefits again and again and again and again. Here are the times you did so. But people at home are forced to think, oh, who's lying and who's not? I don't know. I'm just a person at home. I have no idea. Maybe some of them actually went on YouTube and actually looked it up and could find the answers. But for the most part, you can imagine people here just kind of sitting at home and backing the candidate they already support without thinking about who's lying and who's not.
What the hell are you thinking?
Well, let me show you times that Joe Biden was advocating for these cuts. Watch.
I introduced the balanced budget amendment in 1984. It got nowhere.
This year in committee, a number of amendments were offered to fix what I perceive to be at least problems in this resolution, this constitutional amendment. We tried to keep the Social Security Trust Fund off budget. I hope we kind of keep our eye on the ball here, and to me, that's the driving force behind this amendment. When I introduced the budget freeze years ago, it's an awful thing you're doing, Joe. You are all the programs we care about, you're freezing them. Money for the blind, the disabled, education, and so on. And my argument then is the one I make now, and that is that if we don't do that, all the things I care most about are going to be gone. I'm up for re-election this year, and I'm going to remind everybody what I did at home, which is going to cost me politically. When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government. And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time. Somebody has to tell me in here how we're going to do this hard work without dealing with any of those sacred cows. I'm one of those Democrats who voted for the constitutional amendment to balance the budget. I have introduced on 4 occasions entire plans to balance the budget, knowing I'm not president and I'm not the leader, but for illustrative purposes. I tried with Senator Grassley back in the 80s to freeze all government spending, including Social Security, including everything. Ladies, American people know we have to fix Social Security. They know we can't grow our way to a solution. They know we're going to have to make some tough decisions. But we have to be ready to straightforwardly tell them what we're about to do.
We have a deficit. We have Social Security and Medicare looming. The number of people on Social Security and Medicare is now 40 million. People, it's going to be 80 million in 15 years. Would you consider looking at those programs? Age of eligibility, absolutely. Cost of living, put it all on the table?
The answer is absolutely, you have to. It's a real simple proposition. If any one of the challengers running against incumbent Democrat or Republicans attacks us on this point, we'll all stay together. That's the kind of leadership that is needed. Social Security is not the hard one to solve. Medicare, that is the gorilla in the room. And you've got to put all of it on the table.
Everything.
Everything. You've got to.
I mean, unbelievable. And then the last clip there where he talks about the kind of leadership that's needed. Yeah, the kind of leadership that's needed is screwing the American people together and we all have each other's backs.
Like, I don't know a whole lot of people in the top 1/10 of 1% or the top 1% are relying on Social Security. Do we need a pro-growth progressive tax code? It raises enough revenue to make sure that the Social Security and Medicare can stay. Still needs adjustments. Beef up the number of responders dealing with these crush of cases. And in addition to that, we have to make sure that we are in a position that we are. Well, let me go to the second thing. I've spoken enough of that. The president must use the Defense Production
Like I
Act.
said, I don't want to be too hard because we both read off teleprompters and it sucks whenever it breaks. But it's a very revealing window into how well he's able to handle himself.
First of all, it wasn't really a plan. It was a bunch of political attacks combined with sort of vague platitudes about let's get more masks and help to workers. Okay, great. Thank you very much, sir. But it also reveals that he doesn't really know the plan himself because once it's not on the teleprompter, he's like, the other thing is, it doesn't work to do this awkward, stilted teleprompter thing from your basement with a lectern. It just shows an inability to match the moment, an inability to sort of be authentic.
This is basic optics 101.
It's not good. It's not good. It's not a good sign.
No, absolutely not.
If you could take care, if you were a quartermaster, you can sure and hell take care of running a department store thing, where in the second floor of the ladies department, or whatever. You know what I mean?
What is he talking about, James? What on God's earth was that?
I don't know, Paul. I mean,
you
can take the water glass or the thing or the telephone, and back in my day, the telephone had a cord, and it would ring, and it had a bell in it, and you'd pick it up, and you'd say hello, and you wouldn't know who was on the other end. And I mean, it's great, Paul. Yeah. I mean, this is what Joe Biden is down to, and he should be allowed to just be at home.
This bloke can't travel like 10 kilometres, let alone your schedule, Pauline. Like, he'd lose his marbles trying to do what you do, travelling around Queensland.
Now, just to address something here, because some people may think, oh, freezing, but freezing isn't cutting. Freezing is cutting. When inflation increases the cost of everything else, when the cost of living increases, and you freeze these benefits, that's a cut. It's like saying, oh, I'm freezing your paycheck for the next 10 years while the cost of everything else increases. That's a cut. So this is clear. All Joe Biden does is lie, and somehow gets away with it.
The things that go wrong with us in our lives have the biggest potential to become a part of our gift to the world. However, at any given moment, we all have the power to decide that this is not how our story is going to end. I'm starting this chapter by donating to the charities that are listed on the screen and linked below, going out and registering to vote and voting for Joe Biden, and encouraging each and every one of us who are able to be.
Wait. She's trying to show how good of a person that she is. So look, here's all the petitions that she signed, and she'd let you know she signed them. Look at this. Also,
you click that link?
Which one? This one?
Yeah.
I hate clicking Bitleys. I'll click it though.
I know. I'm suspicious why it has to be a bit.ly. Why can't Okay, that's weird. Do you know what I mean? Like, is she tracking this shit, bro?
Yeah, she's tracking it. She's trying to prove a point. She's trying to prove how good of a person she is, and she's tracking to see if people click it to say.
What is LDF?
I have no idea, actually.
I'm sorry, but with this lady, why is she using it?
NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund Confidence, and you see
Is she sponsored by Joe Biden? She didn't have to put ads because Joe Biden's like, yo, slip it in, or what?
Well, you see right here, it says the video is 100% demonetized. It says, join me in donating. And then it says, hey, by the way, I also signed all of these petitions. I will be updating this as I sign more, which is why I didn't edit them into the screen.
Okay, this is super hyper analytical.
Yes.
But look, all YouTubers, and even she seems to know that put HTTP, semicolon, / / that's when it makes it clickable. Why does she make the bit.ly clickable, but not feedingamerica.org or Pandemic of Love? Like, does she have some sort of connection with the bit.ly? You know what I mean? Maybe I'm like being extra skeptical here, but like, she's tracking one of the links, but not the two other ones.
I don't. Oh.
See what I mean, dude? Like, this is kind of sketch, bro.
She's tracking analytics for that website for some reason.
Right. And what is voting for Joe Biden? So like,
why is she doing that? Let me see this again. I'm gonna see if she's got any correlation to this.
Like,
Salsa Labs? Well, the URL, the Salsa Labs is a fundraising software for nonprofits. That's what it says. This is a donor management system, digital marketing, online fundraising.
Salsa Labs?
Yeah. Okay, so this is like, and I got this from her long overdue apology thing. If I click the bit link,
yeah,
it's in the
a web host, or is this? Like, I'm just confused. Okay, I'm gonna go to the video itself and try to investigate. Cause let me see.
I'm actually gonna see. So yeah, something is weird about this, but I might just be up late delirious.
Much because, as you point out, what's behind the words? What's there? And a lot of people, the rap on Biden has always been, it's just a surface.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again. Joe Biden was victimized by the truth.
Throughout his more than 4-decade-long career in politics, Biden has become known.
I've been referred to as middle-class Joe. It's not always meant as a compliment. I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again.
And parts of his political history continue to haunt him, like his role in the questioning of Anita Hill in 1991.
It is appropriate to ask Professor Hill anything any member wishes to ask her to plumb the depths of her credibility.
And more recently, it was his relationship with personal space.
The boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset, and I get it.
Today I am proud to endorse Joe Biden because he will be an extraordinary president.
We cannot win this re-election. Excuse me, we can only re-elect Donald Trump.
The clear path to lead us out of this crisis.
We have to take care of the cure. That will make the problem worse no matter what.
Joe Biden brings values and integrity to work every day because he never forgets his roots.
Kids used to come up and reach in and pull and rub my leg down.
We need a forward-looking, battle-tested leader who will fight for the people.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
The strategic thinking to bring our nation together. A leader who is the personification of hope and courage.
All men are created by the you know the thing.
Values, authenticity, and integrity.
His hands were down my skirt and up my skirt.
He has a history of very dark perversions, from child pedophilia to now quite possibly rape.
Louise Obispo, California. Hello.
Yes, hello. I'm wondering what a staffer would do besides go to the press in Washington. My daughter had just moved there after working with a prominent senator and could not get through with her problems at all. The only thing she could have done was go to the press, and she chose not to do it out of respect for him.
Well, she had a story to tell, but out of respect for the person she worked for, she didn't tell it.
That's true.
Well, these are the people who do come to the lowest runners, right? This network who says, I want to let you know about what's going on. You might want to guy down the hall.
And a lot of these people have a sense of obligation. They feel that this public official should be accountable if it's something
wrong. The whistleblowers to the president.
Joe Biden is a perfect example of what projecting looks like. Speaking of the Me Too movement, all voices matter, right, Gaga? Right, Alyssa Milano? So why are you supporting an accused rapist? Gaga, you've been a victim, right? So what are you doing? We all know you're not fully home. They're controlled, they're brainwashed, they're feared into groupthink. Otherwise, they're out of the club.
This is a time for choosing. Do we choose to protect the land of the free and the home of the brave, or do we choose to hand over our freedoms, our voice, and our vote to those who despise our country and our way of life?
Disturbing forces are driving this mayhem to intentionally disrupt, divide, and distract us all.
And their goal is clear. Break us down. Destroy our religious freedom. Spread hate for our country from within our country. Take over our businesses, our communities, our lives.
Okay, so what else do all these folks have in common? Well, they want us to vote by mail this election. Why push the largest method of fraudulent voting in America onto the public?
There are dangerous powers at play, and they are seeking to take advantage of this chaos, to further divide and ultimately to conquer our nation from within. Those that despise, that hate our traditions, our freedoms, well, they're going to use this election in any way that they can to accomplish their goal. In fact, I believe it's already begun, because one of the key steps is to destroy individual liberty, to take away the freedom to choose. What we are witnessing is part of a coordinated plan to take down our country, one pillar at a time. But this doesn't happen all at once. Marxism, what does that mean? For decades, followers like Castro, Pol Pot, Lenin, Guevara, Mao, they all use this Marxist plan to dismantle their own government. And when you look at the roster of those who have followed this philosophy, the results are terrifying. Marx's manifesto depicts a utopia, a picture of a so-called ideal society. But according to Marx, communism can only be obtained through a series of events that includes erasing history and the forcible overthrow of foundational institutions like family, education, and religion. Any of this sound familiar? Because this is how it starts. But listen to me carefully. From what I've seen, from what I know, from what history tells us, the Marxist playbook is not about winning an election. It is about ending them all together. And that is why we see this push to universal mail ballots and this avalanche of lawsuits for the removal of voter ID, signature verification standards, and the expansion of vote harvesting. This is engineered chaos. And the outcome is that we are not going to know who our president is on November 3rd. And the longer it goes, the more lawsuits there will be. Remember Bush v. Gore? A big call to make. CNN announces that we call Florida in the Al Gore column.
Turn the lights down. The party just got wild in Florida. Goes to Mr. Bush. Bush wins. Headline of the hour. folks, it might be premature.
So we take Florida away from George W. Bush.
This is no longer an election. This is like Alice in Wonderland.
The one thing no one expected in a presidential campaign is that we wouldn't know who won on Election Day.
Bush versus Gore was a watershed moment where the curtain was lifted on our election system in the United States, and we realized we've got to do something to fix it. And in some ways, Congress did, but then there were the unintended or possibly intended consequences.
Under intense media scrutiny, the flaws in Florida's system became clear.
Vote-o-matic machines and conflicting rules about ballots and fuzzy rules about what is a vote.
It's slightly detached.
As both campaigns launched lawsuits over the disputed results, accusations of partisanship fueled the tension.
I voted. Whether or not my vote counted, I don't know.
The question of who will be the next president is right on her desk. She's the Secretary of State, Katherine Harris.
As Secretary of State, I am Chief Elections Officer.
Harris was the state co-chair of George Bush's presidential campaign. Today, Governor Jeb Bush said she's doing a good job.
I think she's doing the right thing.
Political insiders say there is no evidence Harris is being manipulated by the Bushes.
What I think people didn't realize before 2000 is that the people running the elections had a huge stake in the outcome.
While each campaign battled it out in court, the recounts dragged on.
I this record. No, you don't need to make a record.
I do need to make a record. Florida tonight remains too close to call. So where's the good news, you say? Here it is. The election was decided without them.
We were in the middle of the final recount when somebody's phone in the room rings.
36 days after the election, the U.S. Supreme Court brought everything to a halt.
It does appear quite clear that George W. Bush, the eldest son of a former president, is going to be the president-elect of this country with the 25 electoral votes from Florida. Good morning.
The overwhelming consensus after 2000 was that our electoral machinery was broken. We did not run elections as well as we should, and we should fix this.
Florida voters who were in lines up to 7 hours on Election Day say the entire process is embarrassing.
In the fall of 2002, Congress passed a sweeping reform bill, the Help America Vote Act, or HAVA.
This bill would provide almost $4 billion, much of it to individual states, to replace old voting machines, train poll workers, and combat fraud.
The heart of the reform was a promise to improve voting machines, to make the machines work better. That, more or less, has been kept, but a whole series of new problems were injected.
The candidates are all out to make sure that their voters are getting registered and their voters are voting.
Nearly 16 years after Bush v. Gore, the voting wars show no sign of slowing.
This voting system is out of control. You have people, in my opinion, that are voting many, many times.
Hillary Clinton courts African Americans with a call for automatic voter registration.
My sense is that she just wants an opportunity to have, commit greater acts of voter fraud.
There is a very concerted effort to suppress the vote.
At least 16 states have new voting restrictions this presidential election. At the same time, a handful of states are making it easier to vote, with automatic registration and mail-in voting, meaning that where a person lives and which party controls that state can determine how easy or hard it is to vote.
We can't just rest our entire voting rights in the hands of politicians. Whether their self-interest is expanding voting access or restricting voting access, their motives are not going to be pure.
What people thought Bush v. Gore did was expose a problem that politicians could solve. What in fact it did was it exposed an opportunity that politicians could exploit. And that's really been the most important legacy of Bush v. Gore.
Imagine that, times 50. So while the courts attempt to fight it out, control over the government goes to the second in line, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Think about that. That is just one of the reasons why this election is important and why some will stop at nothing to exploit it and seize control of our country. And what do you think they're going to do with that power? State elections are overseen by secretaries of state. And in almost all instances, it's the Secretary of State who seals, who finalizes their state's election. That's why the Secretary of State project was so clever. Funded in part by billionaire donor George Soros and established in 2006 as a partisan effort devoted to electing Democrats to the office of Secretary of State in targeted swing states. Remember, the scheme here is to prevent the people from deciding who their president is, to have the courts or Congress make that decision. Anybody but the people. Think about it. Even in the midst of war, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the longest war, the global war on terror. Well, throughout all of that, our elections have still been held without disruption. Yet today, we're being told that a pandemic is reason enough to upend the way we've held elections since our country was founded. And in that time, we've been through worse pandemics. It's odd, isn't it, that it's acceptable for mass gatherings to occur in protests, but not for our election process to be held without interruption. Why is this? Are things really that desperate? Or is this just calculated to control our voices? Because all signs point to control. First, you establish the framework for the attack. More election-related lawsuits have been filed in 2020 than in the previous 5 years combined. Next, suppress the voters. We're seeing governors and secretaries of state use unlawful police powers to illegally control citizens, shutting down businesses, schools, places of worship, eliminating voting booths, and forcing mass mail ballots. Then, create engineered chaos to subvert transparent processes, eliminate ballot chains of custody, just confuse voters, unleash 600 and more lawyers to ensure no one is accountable for all of this manufactured mayhem, and finally, with the clock running out, let Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, and the rest of the House of Representatives, let them decide who the president will be. We know they are going to do it because they are telegraphing it. When they tell you who they are, believe them. This is a coup on the American system of elections, and we have to be prepared to stop it. We're fighting.
Let's cut the crap. Let's say what we're all thinking. Deep state, we know you're scared. And symbolism will be your downfall. Censorship will be your downfall. We see you stuttering through Biden, and we see you scared in the news. There are many faithful and trusting patriots out there, hoping, waiting, and working to expose you and your crimes against humanity. The world we create doesn't include pedophilia. It doesn't include the swamp. Future will prove past, and past proves the future.
If they're going to do things that are stupid as well as immoral, then they're probably too dumb to have the job of president.
The voters are going to have to decide whether he was dishonest or dumb.
He's a pathological liar.